Commander Lee Mina stood at the edge of the massive crater, her boots crunching on the crystalline sand that covered the dead planet's surface. The twin suns of Kepler 442c cast strange shadows through the ruins that stretched before her team. Ancient towers made of some unknown metal twisted toward the purple sky like frozen screams. "Commander, we're getting some weird readings from that structure over there," called Dr. Park Jin-ho, pointing toward what looked like a temple in the center of the ruins. His scanner was beeping rapidly, and the display showed energy signatures that shouldn't exist on a planet that had been dead for thousands of years. Mina adjusted her helmet and checked her team's positions. Captain Yoon Dae was setting up a perimeter with the security squad, while Dr. Choi Hana worked on analyzing soil samples near the crater's edge. Everything about this place felt wrong. The official report said this civilization had destroyed itself in a civil war, but the destruction patterns didn't match what she was seeing. "Jinho, what kind of readings?" Mina asked, walking carefully over the uneven ground toward the temple structure. The building was massive, easily 10 stories tall, with walls covered in symbols that seemed to shift and change when she wasn't looking directly at them. "It's like there's still power running through the building. But that's impossible. This place has been dead for 3,000 years, Jinho replied, his voice crackling through the comm system. He was young for a xenoarchaeologist, but his instincts had saved the team more than once during their exploration missions. As they approached the temple, Mina noticed something that made her stop. The ground around the building was different. While the rest of the planet was covered in the strange crystalline sand, this area had normal dirt and rocks. It was as if something had protected this one building from whatever disaster had hit the planet. "Commander, I'm picking up an energy signature from underground." Choi Hana's voice came through the comm. She had moved closer to the temple and was kneeling beside what looked like a metal panel set into the ground. "It's faint, but it's definitely artificial." Mina felt a chill run down her spine. In her 15 years of exploring dead worlds, she had learned to trust her instincts. And right now, every instinct was telling her that they were about to find something that would change everything. The team worked for 2 hours to access the underground chamber. When they finally broke through the sealed entrance, they found themselves in a room filled with floating crystals that glowed with soft blue light. The crystals were arranged in perfect patterns around a central platform that held what looked like a massive computer system. "By the stars," whispered Jinho, staring at the technology that was clearly far more advanced than anything humans had ever built. "This stuff is still working after all this time." Choi Hana was already connecting her portable computer to the alien system. Her fingers flew over the keyboard as she worked to break through the security protocols. "I'm getting something. The system is responding to our universal translation software." For the next several hours, the team worked to download and decode the massive amounts of data stored in the crystals. What they found made Mina's blood run cold. The files contained detailed records of communications between this dead civilization and the Zephyrian Collective, humanity's closest allies in the galaxy. The records showed that the Zephyrians had not come to this world as friends. They had arrived with promises of trade and cooperation, just as they had with humanity 200 years ago. But the communications revealed a different story. The Zephyrians had been slowly poisoning the planet's water supply while publicly offering medical aid to fight the mysterious illness that was killing the population. "Commander, you need to see this," Choi Hana said, her voice shaking. She had pulled up what looked like a battle plan on her screen. "These aren't just records of what happened here. They're plans for other worlds, including Earth." Mina leaned over to read the translated text. The document detailed a systematic plan to weaken dozens of civilizations through biological weapons disguised as medical aid. Each species was studied for years before the Zephyrians made contact. They learned weaknesses, mapped military installations, and placed agents in key positions. Then, when the time was right, they would release the bioweapons and wait for the civilizations to collapse. The most terrifying part was the timeline. According to the documents, the bioweapon designed for humans had already been deployed. It was hidden in the medical supplies that Zephyrian ships had been delivering to human colonies for the past 5 years. The weapon was designed to activate slowly, making it look like a natural plague when it finally reached critical mass. "How long do we have?" Mina asked, though she was afraid to hear the answer. Jinho was running calculations on his portable computer, based on the distribution patterns and the activation timeline, maybe 6 months before the first major outbreak. After that, it spreads exponentially. The team worked through the night to copy every piece of data they could find. By morning, they had evidence of the largest genocide in galactic history. The Zephyrians had destroyed over 40 civilizations using the same method they were now using on humanity. As their ship prepared to leave the dead world, Mina stared out at the ruins one last time. Somewhere in those twisted towers were the remains of billions of people who had trusted the wrong allies. She would not let humanity become another entry in the Zephyrians' collection of extinct species. Admiral Kim Sora sat in the deepest level of the Earth Defense Command bunker, staring at the holographic display that showed the evidence Commander Lee Mina's team had brought back from the dead world. The blue light from the alien crystals cast eerie shadows on the faces of the 12 most powerful people in human space. Each person in the room had sworn an oath of absolute secrecy before entering. "Show them the medical reports," Sora said quietly to Dr. Choi Hana, who stood nervously beside the projection table. Hana's hands shook as she activated the next set of files. "We tested blood samples from colonists on 17 different worlds. The bioweapon is already in their systems. It's designed to look like a natural virus when it activates, but it's actually a carefully engineered weapon that attacks human DNA." General Beijun leaned forward, his weathered face grim. "How many people are infected?" "Based on the distribution records we found, approximately 40 million colonists have received the contaminated medical supplies. The Zephyrians have been very careful to spread it slowly over 5 years, making sure it reached every major human settlement outside of Earth." The room fell silent. 40 million lives hanging in the balance, and they couldn't even warn the colonists without alerting the Zephyrians that their plan had been discovered. "What about Earth?" asked Director Lim Nari from the Intelligence Division. "Are we infected here too?" Hana shook her head. "The Zephyrians plan to save Earth for last. According to their documents, they want our planet intact for colonization. The bioweapon deployment here was scheduled to begin next month." Sora stood and walked to the large window that showed the bustling city above them. Millions of people going about their daily lives, completely unaware that their trusted alien allies were planning to murder them all. "What do we need to stop this?" Dr. Park Jinho stepped forward with a tablet in his hands. "We've been working on countermeasures. The good news is that the bioweapon has a very specific activation sequence. If we can develop the right antidote and deploy it before activation, we can save the infected colonists." "And the bad news?" Sora asked, though she could see it written on his face. "We need 3 months minimum to develop and produce enough antidote for 40 million people. The Zephyrians' timeline shows activation begins in 6 weeks. Captain Yoon Dae had been quiet until now, but he suddenly spoke up. "What if we don't play defense? What if we hit them first?" Everyone turned to look at him. He was young for a captain, but his record in special operations was impressive. "Explain," Sora said. "The Zephyrians think they're so much smarter than us. They've been studying humanity for 200 years, learning our weaknesses, placing their people in our governments and military. But they made one mistake." He activated his own tablet, showing a map of known Zephyrian positions throughout human space. "They've been so focused on watching us that they never considered we might be watching them back. Every cultural exchange, student, every trade representative, every diplomatic observer they've placed in our territory, we know where they are." Director Lim Nari nodded slowly. "Our intelligence services have been tracking them for routine security purposes. We never suspected they were enemy agents, but we do have files on all of them." Sora felt a spark of hope. "What are you suggesting?" "We turn their own strategy against them," Yoon Dae replied. "They've been using our technology, our communication networks, our transportation systems. What if we modify those systems to work for us instead of them?" Dr. Choi Hana's eyes lit up with understanding. "We could create a virus for their computer systems, something that spreads through their networks and gives us control of their technology when we need it." "Exactly. And while they're dealing with that, our ships hit their bioweapon production facilities. We know where they are from the documents we found. General Beijun was studying tactical maps on his tablet. It's risky. If we fail, they activate the bioweapon early and 40 million people die immediately instead of in 6 weeks. If we do nothing, those 40 million people die anyway, Sora pointed out, plus everyone on Earth. The next 3 weeks became the most intense period in human military history. Working in absolute secrecy, teams of scientists, engineers, and military specialists prepared for a war that humanity couldn't afford to lose. Dr. Hana led a team developing both the antidote for the bioweapon and a computer virus that could take control of Zephyrian technology. They worked in underground labs using only the most trusted personnel. Captain Yoon Dae coordinated with intelligence services across human space to identify and quietly monitor every Zephyrian agent. They couldn't arrest them without revealing that the plan had been discovered, but they prepared teams to neutralize the agents when the time came. Meanwhile, Admiral Sora worked with fleet commanders to position ships near known Zephyrian facilities. Without making it obvious, they were preparing for an attack. The ships moved under the pretense of routine training exercises and supply runs. The hardest part was maintaining normal diplomatic relations with the Zephyrians. Ambassador Ote had to sit through weekly meetings with Zephyrian officials, smiling and discussing trade agreements while knowing they were planning humanity's extinction. As the deadline approached, everyone involved in the secret operation felt the weight of their species' survival on their shoulders. They had one chance to get this right. If they failed, humanity would join the 40 extinct civilizations whose stories were buried in the crystal archives of dead worlds. The countdown had begun. Ambassador Lim Nari adjusted her formal diplomatic robes as she walked through the gleaming corridors of Omega Prime Station. The massive space station floated in neutral territory between human and Zephyrian space, its crystal walls reflecting the light of distant stars. Today was supposed to be a celebration of 200 years of friendship between their species. She carried herself with the calm dignity expected of Earth's chief diplomat, but underneath her composed exterior, her heart was racing. Hidden in her ceremonial jewelry was a tiny device that would broadcast everything that happened in the next hour to every human ship, station, and colony in the galaxy. The main conference hall was filled with delegates from dozens of species. The Zephyrians had made this into a grand spectacle, inviting representatives from across the Galactic Council to witness what they called a historic announcement about the future of human-Zephyrian cooperation. High Ambassador Kethvar stood at the center of the room, his tall, silver-skinned form radiating confidence. His species had always looked elegant and peaceful, with their flowing robes and gentle voices. For 2 centuries, humans had considered them to be the ideal example of what an advanced civilization should be. "My friends," Kethvar began, his melodious voice carrying easily through the hall, "today marks the beginning of a new era. For too long, we have watched younger species struggle with the challenges of galactic citizenship. The time has come for more direct guidance." Nari felt her throat go dry. This was it, the moment they had been preparing for. She casually touched the small pin on her collar, activating the hidden transmitter. Across human space, Admiral Kim Sora and her fleets would now be listening to every word. "The human species," Kethvar continued, "has shown remarkable potential, but also dangerous instabilities. Their aggressive nature and rapid expansion threaten the peaceful order we have worked so hard to maintain in this galaxy." Several alien delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The Altarian ambassador looked confused, while the representative from the Centauri Republic frowned deeply. "Therefore," Kethvar said, his voice taking on a colder tone, "the Zephyrian collective has decided that humanity's time as an independent species must come to an end." The hall erupted in shocked murmurs. Nari kept her face carefully neutral, even as her hands clenched into fists beneath the table. Around her, other human delegates looked stunned and frightened. "You see?" Kethvar explained with the casual tone of someone discussing the weather. "We have been preparing for this transition for quite some time. A specially designed biological agent has already been distributed to human colonies throughout the galaxy. In approximately 3 weeks, it will activate and begin the process of peaceful extinction." The Altarian ambassador stood up abruptly. "This is monstrous. You're talking about genocide." Kethvar turned to him with a patient smile. Not genocide, friend Veltar. Evolution. We are simply helping a flawed species transition to a higher form of existence. Their worlds will be preserved and put to better use. Nari finally stood, her voice carrying clearly through the suddenly silent hall. And what makes you think we'll simply accept this fate? The Zephyrian ambassador laughed, a sound like silver bells that somehow managed to be completely without warmth. My dear Ambassador Nari, what choice do you have? Our technology is centuries ahead of yours. Our agents have been studying your weaknesses for generations. We know your military capabilities, your political structures, your psychological limitations. You know what you think you know, Nari replied calmly. But perhaps you don't know us as well as you believe. Kethvar's expression shifted slightly, the first crack in his confident facade. What do you mean? Instead of answering, Nari touched her collar pin again, this time activating a different function. Throughout the station, hidden speakers came alive with Admiral Sora's voice. All human vessels, this is Admiral Sora. Operation Payback is now active. Repeat, Operation Payback is active. The lights in the conference hall flickered as the station's communication systems began broadcasting the conversation to every corner of the galaxy. On distant worlds, humans who had been quietly monitoring Zephyrian agents for weeks suddenly moved into action. Kethvar's face went pale as he realized what was happening. Impossible. Our security systems. Your security systems have been compromised for the past month, Nari interrupted. Every piece of Zephyrian technology in human space has been modified by our engineers. Right now, your ships are losing power, your communication networks are failing, and your weapon systems are shutting down. Through the massive windows of the conference hall, they could see flashes of light in the distance as human fleets materialized from hiding places throughout the system. Ships that had been cloaked using modified Zephyrian technology now revealed themselves, surrounding every Zephyrian vessel in the area. You mentioned studying our psychological limitations, Nari continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. But you missed something important about human psychology. When we're threatened with extinction, we don't just lie down and die. We fight back. The other alien delegates were now openly staring at the unfolding confrontation. Some looked horrified at the Zephyrian revelation, while others seemed impressed by humanity's response. Captain Otei's voice crackled through the station's speakers. Zephyrian vessels, this is the Earth Defense Force. Your weapons are offline, and your shields are down. Surrender immediately or we will open fire. Kethvar stumbled backward, his elegant composure completely shattered. This cannot be happening. We planned for every contingency. You planned for the humans you thought you knew, Nari said. But you never really understood us at all. The same species that creates beautiful art also created the warriors who are currently surrounding your fleets. We are capable of both great compassion and terrible vengeance. The revelation was complete. The galaxy now knew the truth about the Zephyrian collective, and humanity had just announced that it would not go quietly into extinction. The first battle began exactly 12 minutes after Ambassador Lim Nari's broadcast ended. Captain Otei watched from the bridge of the destroyer Soul's Pride as Zephyrian ships tried desperately to restart their weapon systems. Their elegant vessels, designed for ceremonial displays and controlled warfare, suddenly found themselves helpless against human ships built for survival in the harsh depths of space. All batteries open fire, Otei commanded calmly. The human fleet unleashed everything they had. Missiles streaked through space like angry stars, while energy weapons carved bright lines across the darkness. The Zephyrian ships, their shields, still offline from the computer virus, crumpled under the assault like paper in a fire. 3 light-years away, Colonel Han Yuri was leading the first ground assault on a Zephyrian bioweapon facility. Her troops moved through the alien corridors like ghosts, using tactics the enemy had never seen before. While Zephyrian soldiers expected orderly formation fighting, the humans struck from unexpected angles and disappeared before their opponents could respond. "Contact left," shouted Sergeant Kim Day as a group of Zephyrian guards rounded a corner. The aliens were tall and graceful, carrying weapons that looked more like art pieces than tools of war. But the humans were ready. They had studied the facility's layout for weeks and knew every room, every passage, every weakness. Han Yuri's squad moved like water, flowing around obstacles and striking at weak points with devastating precision. The Zephyrian guards fell back in confusion. Their training had prepared them for civilized warfare against opponents who followed predictable patterns. They had no idea how to fight humans who crawled through ventilation shafts, used explosives in creative ways, and treated every piece of furniture as a potential weapon. In space, Lieutenant Commander Song Kang was leading a squadron of fighter pilots against a Zephyrian fleet near the Vega system. The enemy ships were bigger and more heavily armed, but they moved in perfect formations that made them predictable targets. "Break formation and go wild," Song Kang ordered his pilots. "Show them what chaos looks like." The human fighters scattered, like leaves in a storm. They dove under capital ships, weaved between formations, and used the Zephyrians' own vessels as cover. The alien pilots, trained for elegant maneuvers and coordinated attacks, couldn't adapt to the three-dimensional madness of human combat tactics. Song Kang's fighter rolled inverted and dove toward a Zephyrian cruiser, firing missiles at point-blank range before pulling up at the last second. Behind him, the cruiser exploded in a brilliant fireball that lit up the surrounding space. Back on the bioweapon facility, Colonel Han Yuri had reached the main laboratory. Inside, she found something that made her blood boil with rage. Thousands of containers filled with different versions of the bioweapon, each one labeled with the name of a species the Zephyrians had destroyed. Humans, version 7.3, she read from one container. Effective against all human genetic variants. Activation time, 90 days. Mortality rate, 99.7%. Next to it was another container labeled Altarians, version 2.1, and another marked Centauri, version 4.6. Each one represented an entire civilization that had trusted the wrong allies. "Sir, we found something else," called Private Lee Min from across the room. He was standing beside a massive computer terminal that was still active despite the virus attack. Han Yuri rushed over to see what he had discovered. The screen showed a real-time map of Zephyrian bioweapon deployments across the galaxy. Dozens of worlds were marked in red, indicating active biological warfare campaigns. "They're not just targeting us," she whispered in horror. "They're hitting 6 different species right now." She immediately activated her communication device. "Command, this is Colonel Han. We need to get word to the Altarians, the Centauri Republic, and the other species marked on this map. The Zephyrians have been poisoning them too." The revelation changed everything. What had started as humanity's fight for survival suddenly became something much larger. The other species of the Galactic Council realized they were also targets, and their fleets began joining the human assault on Zephyrian positions. Dr. Choi Hana, working in a mobile laboratory aboard the medical ship Mercy, had been racing to complete the antidote for the human bioweapon. But now she had samples of the Zephyrian weapons targeting other species as well. "We can save them all," she told Admiral Kim Sora over the communication link. "The bioweapons are based on similar principles. If we can modify our antidote, we can create versions that work for other species too." The war that had begun as a desperate fight for human survival was becoming a crusade to save the galaxy from the Zephyrian threat. Ship after ship joined the growing alliance, as species that had been slowly dying from mysterious plagues suddenly understood the true source of their suffering. On the Zephyrian homeworld, High Admiral Velkan watched in growing panic as his forces crumbled across the galaxy. The humans were fighting like nothing his species had ever encountered. They ignored conventional tactics, used their own weaknesses as strengths, and turned every disadvantage into an opportunity. "How are they doing this?" he demanded of his tactical advisors. "Our projections showed them to be an inferior species." "Sir," one of his aides said nervously, "I think we may have misunderstood them. They don't fight to win according to our rules. They fight to survive at any cost." As reports poured in of facility after facility falling to human assault teams, Velkan began to understand the terrible mistake his people had made. They had awakened something they were not prepared to face. The reckoning had begun, and the Zephyrians were learning too late that humanity's greatest weapon was not their technology or their numbers, but their absolute refusal to surrender. 6 months after the last Zephyrian fortress fell, Director Lee Mina stood in what had once been the High Council chambers on the Zephyrian homeworld. The elegant spires and crystal walls remained, but now they housed the Interspecies Justice Commission, with representatives from 47 different worlds working together to rebuild what had been destroyed. The transformation was remarkable. Where once Zephyrian officials had plotted genocide, now teams of scientists from dozens of species worked side by side to restore poisoned worlds and develop new medicines. The building buzzed with activity as translators, engineers, and historians collaborated on the massive task of undoing centuries of hidden damage. "The memorial gardens are ready for the dedication ceremony," reported Captain Yoon-dae as he entered Mina's office. Through the large windows, they could see the vast gardens that now covered the former military districts of the Zephyrian capital. Each section was dedicated to one of the extinct species, with plants and monuments chosen to honor their unique cultures. Mina nodded, reviewing the guest list for tomorrow's ceremony. Representatives from every surviving species would attend, along with the human families who had volunteered to tend the memorial sites. It had been their idea to transform the Zephyrian homeworld into a living reminder of the cost of unchecked power. "Any word from Dr. Choi Hana about the restoration projects?" Mina asked. "The latest report is encouraging," Yoon-dae replied, pulling up data on his tablet. "The antidote programs have been successful on 36 worlds so far. The Altarians should be completely free of the bioweapon within another month, and the Centauri colonies are showing remarkable recovery rates." The medical breakthrough had been Dr. Hana's greatest achievement. Working with samples from the Zephyrian laboratories, her team had developed not just cures for the active bioweapons, but preventive treatments that could protect against similar attacks in the future. The knowledge was being shared freely with all species, ensuring that no one could ever again hold such power over life and death. Admiral Kim Sora entered the office, still wearing the blue uniform of the Human Defense Force, though her role had expanded far beyond protecting just humanity. As the commander of the new Galactic Peace Fleet, she was responsible for coordinating military responses to threats against any member species. "The patrol schedules are set," she reported to Mina. "We'll have mixed crews from at least 5 different species on every major patrol route. No single species will have enough military power to threaten the others." This had been one of the most important lessons learned from the Zephyrian War. Never again would any civilization be allowed to accumulate the kind of overwhelming advantage that had enabled the genocide of so many worlds. The new military structure ensured that power was shared among many species, with humans serving as coordinators rather than rulers. "How are the integration programs going?" Mina asked. Sora smiled. The first genuine smile Mina had seen from her in months. "Better than expected. The joint training exercises have been incredibly successful. It turns out that when species work together instead of in isolation, they learn from each other's strengths. The mixed crews had been controversial at first. Many species preferred to work with their own kind and were suspicious of outsiders. But the shared experience of fighting against the Zephyrian threat had created bonds that transcended old prejudices. Human adaptability combined with Altarian precision, Centauri creativity, and the analytical skills of a dozen other species had produced military units more effective than any single species could field alone. Dr. Park Jin-ho appeared in the doorway, carrying a data pad and looking excited. "Director, we've made a breakthrough in the historical archives. We found records of 3 more extinct species that weren't in the original crystal database. We can add them to the memorial gardens." "Excellent," Mina replied. "Make sure their stories are included in the educational programs." The historical project had become one of the most important aspects of the new order. Every school in the galaxy now taught the true history of the Zephyrian genocide, ensuring that future generations would understand the warning signs of such threats. Children from different species learned together, growing up with an understanding of cooperation that their parents had to learn through bitter experience. Ambassador Lim Nari, contacted them through the communication system from the Galactic Council chambers on Omega Prime Station. "The vote is in," she announced, her voice carrying clearly through the speakers. "The new charter has been approved unanimously. The Mutual Protection Accord is now official policy." This was the final piece of the new order. Every species in the galaxy was now bound by treaty to come to the aid of any other species facing extinction-level threats. The Zephyrian strategy of isolating and destroying civilizations one by one could never work again. "What about the Zephyrian survivors?" Sora asked. "They'll be relocated to the colony worlds we've prepared," Mina replied. "Complete rehabilitation, programs, education about the crimes of their former government, and integration into the new galactic community. But they'll be monitored for at least 2 generations to ensure they don't try to rebuild their old power structure." As the sun set over the memorial gardens, Mina reflected on how much had changed. The galaxy that had once lived in fear of hidden enemies now worked together openly. The species that had survived the Zephyrian genocide were stronger for having faced it together. Tomorrow, children from 47 different worlds would play together in schools that taught them to value diversity and cooperation. The memorial gardens would remind them of the price of hatred and the importance of vigilance. Humanity had found its place not as conquerors, but as guardians of a new kind of galactic civilization where trust was earned through transparency and power was shared through cooperation. The new order had begun,